Here, please. Nearly done. Thank you, mate. Okay. All right, that's fine. Thank you very much.
If you're just joining us, you're watching WION The World is One. This is live in Australia, where Australia is hosting India, Japan and the United States for the 4th Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. And the top diplomats are seeking to bolster cooperation in areas including economy, security, coronavirus pandemic and free and open Indo-Pacific. And as you can see there, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is in attendance in the 4th Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, which began today, or which is actually beginning. This is the first time Quad foreign ministers are meeting since the 2 Quad summits last year. Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne will be joining Indian Minister of External Affairs S. Jaishankar, Japanese Minister for Foreign Affairs Hayashi Yoshimasa, and United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken to discuss the positive and ambitious agenda of the Quad. They will be discussing ongoing Quad cooperation in their bilateral phone calls and meetings. Since there is a robust bilateral cooperation between the 4 countries, they are building on their institutional linkages to further Quad cooperation in areas such as healthcare, infrastructure, space, education, and many more.
Mr. Hayashi and Secretary Blinken to Melbourne for the next stage in this very important and collaborative Quad effort. The Quad, as we know and as we practice in everything that we do, is a partnership committed to openness, to transparency, to practical cooperation, to support regional recovery in the face of COVID-19 and also regional security. It's about what 4 great democracies can bring to support the priorities of Indo-Pacific partners. For Australia, India, Japan and the United States are 3 of our closest partners. In response to strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific, we're working together to both amplify and coordinate responses to the most pressing issues of concern to nations across our region, focused on their needs, their priorities. Our objective is to give our region strategic choices and to build the resilience of all states. Colleagues, we find ourselves entering the 3rd year of COVID-19, and in that context we'll increase effort to support regional countries to save lives and livelihoods. Collectively, we've delivered over 500 million vaccine doses as part of our pledge to donate more than 1.3 billion vaccine doses globally. But our assistance goes beyond delivering doses. We're helping to get doses safely into arms. We're on track to support the production of an additional 1 billion vaccine doses in India. Today, we have a packed agenda. We're going to discuss how to deepen cooperation on other challenges, such as humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, maritime security, disinformation, cyber, counter-terrorism, and of course climate change. We, as a Quad, will continue to champion ASEAN centrality, including by supporting the practical implementation of ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific. I think our purpose is clear. It's to act to support an open, inclusive and resilient Indo-Pacific region. A region where sovereign states can, as I said, exercise their own strategic choices, free from coercion, so that their people are able to pursue prosperity. So welcome. I look forward to our discussions, and I'm delighted to hand over now to my very good friend, Dr. Jaishankar.
Thank you, Marise. Dear colleagues and our teams, it's a great pleasure to visit Australia for the 4th Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. And I'm also very appreciative of the fact this is an opportunity for us to do our bilateral meetings as well. My sincere appreciation, Maurice, to the Government of Australia for hosting us in this lovely city of Melbourne. It's my first time here, for the warmth of your hospitality. Now, since our last interaction in February of 2021, the geopolitical and geo-economic global scenario has become more complex. As leading democracies, we pursue our shared vision of upholding a rules-based international order free from coercion, one based on respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty, for rule of law, transparency, freedom of navigation in the international seas, and peaceful resolution of disputes. Our engagement under the Quad framework has been very useful. It has acquired a salience and a momentum with the two leaders summit last year. We have adopted an ambitious, constructive agenda which addresses many of the significant contemporary challenges of our times, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. And this was very evident in the positive vision of our leaders at the summit and the aspirations that they articulated at that time. As the pandemic continues to impact us, we have undertaken collective efforts to address global health security, the Quad vaccine initiative and our collective vaccine delivery, to which Maurice referred to. These have been very crucial in the Indo-Pacific for countries to meet these challenges. We are taking forward initiatives and efforts aimed at resilient supply chains, at trusted critical technologies, at climate action, educational linkages. There is ample scope to deliver humanitarian assistance and disaster response, and to work together to address global issues such as terrorism, cybersecurity, maritime security, and disinformation. India continues to pursue an agile and multidimensional strategy towards the Indo-Pacific through bilateral frameworks, but also cooperation with regional organizations such as ASEAN, whose centrality to the Indo-Pacific we recognize. It is heartening to see the enhanced focus on the Indo-Pacific by countries outside the region. I look forward to our discussions today, and once again, thank you, Maurice, for this opportunity, for getting us together.
Thank you very much, Jay, and turn to Minister Howe.
Thank you very much, and let me make my comment in Japanese, so please use this if you don't understand the Japanese. So, Maurice, Jay, Tony, 本日は親しい友人たちと対面で会合ができて大変嬉しく思っております。この困難な状況の中で本会合を主催してくれたマリース、豪州政府のホスピタリティに心から感謝を申し上げます。昨年バイデン大統領のイニシアチブで開催された
That is Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne, who has welcomed the four ministers, and we had Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar addressing the forum, and Marise Payne also says that they're hoping that the forum will discuss positive and ambitious agenda in support of a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific. This is the first time Quad foreign ministers are meeting since the two Quad summits last year. Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne will be joining Indian Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar, Japanese Minister for Foreign Affairs Hayashi Yoshimasa, who is currently speaking, and United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken to discuss the positive and ambitious agenda of the Quad. They will also be discussing ongoing Quad cooperation in their bilateral phone calls and meetings. Since there is a robust bilateral cooperation between the four countries, they are building on their institutional linkages to further Quad cooperation in areas such as healthcare, infrastructure, space, education. Well, for more on this, our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, is joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour, Siddhant. Members of the Quad portray it as a group that can offer others in the region an alternative to China in areas including COVID-19 resources, disaster relief and cybersecurity. Maybe you can explain to our viewers, why is that?
Well, yes, the big meeting has started in Melbourne. The foreign ministers of the four countries are speaking. And if you talk about what has been said, is if it comes to the Australian foreign minister and the Indian external affairs minister, both emphasized on ASEAN centrality and also Indo-Pacific free from coercion. Now, of course, China is not mentioned directly in the room, but China is present in the room in terms of words like these. And of course, we all know that the Chinese aggressiveness has been a cause of concern for not only all these four countries, but other countries in the region as well. China, of course, will be keenly awaiting.
Sidhant, sorry to cut you short. Sorry to cut you short. Let's go back to the meeting where Antony Blinken is currently addressing the forum.
All I can say, having listened to the three of you, is that I find myself in violent agreement with everything that's been said. We're aligned in our vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific and in our commitment to realize that vision together. Since our four democracies set out a year ago to really revitalize the Quad, we focused on delivering results for people in our countries, but also across the region. And I think we can justly point to real achievements just in that short period of time. Today's meeting, I think, is about building on that progress, and let me just touch quickly on a few areas where I hope will bring focus. One is ending the COVID-19 pandemic together. We are making progress toward our goal of producing at least 1 billion doses of safe, effective vaccines by the end of 2022, in addition to committing collectively to donating more than 1.2 billion vaccine doses. Today we'll talk about additional steps that we can take to ensure that the pandemic recovery is equitable between and within countries, including in vaccine distribution, as well as looking at what we can do to build a stronger global public health security system. We'll also talk about ways to deepen our maritime cooperation, from port security to aligning security aid to partners, which is critical to regional stability and to supply chains alike. And we'll continue to work together to try to bolster the international rules-based order that we've all talked about, and which is underwritten decades of security and growing prosperity for this entire region. That includes championing the right of all countries to choose their own path, free from coercion, and the right to have their sovereignty and territorial integrity respected, whether that's here in the Indo-Pacific, in Europe, or anywhere else in the world. Russia's ongoing threat to Ukraine and the support some countries have expressed for Moscow's dangerous actions is just the latest example of how these rules are being challenged, and it underscores why we have to stand together to defend them. We'll also explore new areas where we can bring our complementary strengths to bear, because the challenges we face are too great to be solved by any one of our countries acting alone. We've all come with ideas for how we can do that, including my own team's plans to foster greater collaboration among leading experts and innovators from outside of government, where our countries have a deep, deep bench to call on. So there's a lot to be said. I think a lot that will be said in the next few hours. And Maurice, again, thank you for bringing us together, and thank you for, I think, the good conversation we're about to have.
Well, that is the opening session of the third in-person meeting of Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. Now, following Tokyo in October 2020, the inaugural meeting in New York City in September 2019, ministers last met virtually in February 2021. This again is the third in-person meeting of Quad Foreign Ministers. Sidhant Sibal, thank you very much for staying on. What is India looking for or looking to achieve from this foreign ministers meeting ahead of the planned summit in Japan?
Well, India is looking on various topics, especially when it comes to vaccines, because as the US Secretary of State emphasized on the vaccines, 1 billion vaccines, all these vaccines will be produced here in India. We know that this was one of the key outcomes of the summit that happened in Washington last year, and that has been the key priority for New Delhi as well. But India will be focusing on infrastructure, supply chains, education. Remember, scholarship is something that is another key outcome of the Quad partnership. And ahead of the Japan summit, where the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also be going, the countries will be in conversation for more outcomes, more non-security issues, where there can be not only camaraderie but also key outcomes that helps the entire region. But if you talk about how these countries have been talking about, China remains the biggest worry. But one thing that will be interesting to be noticed this time will be the emphasis on Moscow, how much there will be a criticism by Quad countries, especially in the joint statement which will be released later today. Now, if you look at the opening statements by the ministers, the Australian and the Indian foreign minister, they did not mention Russia in any ways. But if you look at Anthony Blinken, he did mention about Moscow and the challenge regarding Moscow. Now, that, of course, can be something where other Quad countries might not agree, given India has a very good relationship with Russia. Washington is in a major tiff with Moscow, and how things pan out in Eastern Europe is something that concerns everyone, including here in Delhi. While Delhi has been calling for a peaceful resolution, diplomatic dialogue, but there is another worry as well, that if there is a major escalation in Eastern Europe, that diverts attention of the world from Indo-Pacific, where China has been aggressive.
In fact, now that you've mentioned it, is there hope that the Quad meeting, despite the members not mentioning it, and you've said there that Anthony Blinken has mentioned it, will discuss the situation at the Ukraine-Russia border in the coming days?
Well, we can't basically prejudge what they're going to talk about, but it is expected that Ukraine will be talked about, not by India, but perhaps obviously by the Americans. The American side will be briefing the other Quad countries regarding what is happening in Eastern Europe, how worrisome the situation is. India will obviously not be very keen that there is strong criticism of Russia, given it has close relationship. But what West will be trying to do, perhaps use this as an opportunity to show that there are more countries siding with the West when it comes to the aggressive nature which they have been talking about by the Russians. Russia has dismissed that. Russia is saying that it has its own security concerns, and this is something that India has in fact agreed upon. We know that the Indian envoy to United Nations, when he spoke on the Ukraine issue at the United Nations Security Council, he talked about legitimate security interests. That basically means that what Moscow has been saying, that Ukraine should not join NATO, is something that is legitimate concern of Russia, and that needs to be taken care of. So there are multiple dimensions, as always in diplomacy, and it's tightrope walk for everyone.
Generally, what impact will this Quad meeting have on the Indo-Pacific region?
Well, when it comes to Indo-Pacific, Quad is a major subset of the larger Indo-Pacific conversation that has been going on. There has been conversation in other regional capitals. ASEAN has come out with a white paper on the Indo-Pacific, but Quad is a larger outcome in terms of how four countries which see themselves as a major component of the Indo-Pacific can come together. But there are divergences. What you'll hear about Indo-Pacific here in Delhi is something that you'll hear which will be different in what the narrative is coming from Washington. In fact, there is no geographical boundaries of the Indo-Pacific for India. India is keen that the Indo-Pacific is something that expands from East Africa, the shore of East Africa, till of course South China Sea and perhaps beyond as well. US has a different view. India has been calling for an inclusive Indo-Pacific. So there are divergent views, and we know that when it comes to this Quad meeting is basically to make sure that there are more convergences and more non-security issues can be worked upon.
Live from New Delhi, Siddhant Sibal, thank you for that. Well, the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting has currently begun in Australia. We'll be covering it